Tom Brady might be retired from the field, but off it, he's still playing the game. Only now it's in the boardrooms, back channels, and apparently, behind the scenes of the NFL draft. What started as whispers has turned into a full-blown controversy. And the center of it all, the unexpected, eyebrow-raising, and borderline suspicious fall of Shedeur Sanders to the 144th pick.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Let's not pretend this was normal. Shedeur Sanders, son of Deion Sanders, and one of the most talked about quarterbacks in college football, entered the draft with buzz, stats, and spotlight. His pedigree? Unquestionable. His performance? Solid. His media presence? Impeccable. So when teams passed on him again and again and again, it didn't just spark confusion. It raised red flags. Create new folder. LP podcast. And then Tom Brady walked into the spotlight with his now infamous appearance on Logan Paul's podcast. What should have been a smooth, controlled interview became a key turning point. Brady, usually composed and media-savvy, suddenly sounded off, hesitant, defensive. When the topic of the draft came up, his responses were clumsy and indirect, like someone tiptoeing around landmines. And let's be real, Brady doesn't fumble words unless something's off. That one interview cracked the surface. Brady had already publicly claimed he had no involvement in the draft process. But now, people are questioning that. Why did his voice shake? Why did his tone shift? Why was he dodging? Because maybe his involvement wasn't direct, but it was still real. Let's talk about influence. Tom Brady isn't just a football legend. He's part owner of the Las Vegas Raiders. That alone gives him proximity to key decisions, draft boards, team strategies, internal conversations. So when a player like Shedeur Sanders is up for grabs, and Brady's name is floating around the same conversations as Kevin Stefanski, people are going to connect the dots. Especially when that player somehow slips out of the top 100 and lands over 100 picks deep, without any valid reason. This wasn't about talent. There were no public red flags, no injuries, no behavioral concerns, just a suspicious vacuum of explanation. And when there's a vacuum, people start filling in the blanks. According to the video, the theory isn't that Brady picked up the phone and ordered teams to pass. It's that his presence, his conversations, his subtle influence may have nudged the process. League insiders, executives, and coaches often operate behind closed doors, making handshake agreements and hint-based decisions that never leave a paper trail. That's how the league maintains its control. And Kevin Stefanski? He's reportedly part of this same shadow play. While not as public-facing as Brady, his name is also tied to the idea of backdoor deals, conversations that aren't official but still shift outcomes. And if those conversations included players like Shedeur, we're looking at more than coincidence. What starts to come into focus is a systemic effort, intentional or not, to orchestrate Sanders' fall. Not because he's not talented, not because he's not ready, but because controlling his rise was more beneficial than watching it happen naturally. The NFL has always managed narratives. From Deflategate to trade drama to image rehab campaigns, the league knows how to steer public perception. So when a player like Shedeur Sanders, with his own brand, his own media savvy, and a last name that still makes headlines enters the draft, he becomes more than a quarterback. He becomes a threat to the old playbook. The league thrives on predictability, controlled press, approved quotes, and career arcs that follow a familiar script. But Shedeur wasn't sticking to that. He was rewriting it. And if that scares the traditional power structures, it makes sense that they'd want to hit pause. This is where the theory deepens. What if Brady and Stefanski weren't just gatekeeping Shedeur's draft status, but playing the long game? According to the narrative, Brady may be planning to bring Shedeur to the Raiders. Not now, but down the line. Think about it. If Sanders enters the league with a mid-round price tag, there's less pressure, less hype, and more opportunity to develop him in the background. You shape him quietly away from the cameras until you're ready to unleash him and take credit for the resurrection. That's not wild speculation. It's strategic legacy building. And Brady is legacy obsessed. He's no longer trying to win rings. He's trying to build dynasties from the front office. And having a hand in molding a young quarterback into a star, one he potentially orchestrated the acquisition of, that's a power move. Especially if that QB eventually leads the Raiders to success under Brady's watchful eye. But this plan has one problem. It got exposed early. People are now questioning the whole setup. From Brady's vague responses to Stefanski's connections, to the NFL's deafening silence. The pieces don't fit unless you start asking uncomfortable questions. Why did Shedeur fall with no clear explanation? Why did Brady, who is rarely caught off guard, suddenly sound like he was hiding something? Why are executives like Stefanski even adjacent to these discussions? And most importantly, what does this say about how much power veterans and insiders really have in shaping careers? Because this is bigger than Shedeur. This is about whether the NFL is truly a merit-based league or a political ecosystem where narratives are crafted in backrooms and players are positioned like chess pieces. And while Brady and Stefanski may be the faces of this controversy, they're likely not alone. The league structure rewards quiet influence. Backdoor deals happen more than fans realize. Team decisions are often swayed not by data or scouting reports, but by legacy players, executive preferences, and long-term franchise plans that never get shared publicly. And in this case, it looks like Shedeur got caught in the crossfire. What's remarkable is how he's responded. No rants. No accusations. No cryptic Instagram posts. Just quiet composure. Grinding. Preparing. Letting his performance speak instead of his ego. And that makes the situation even more glaring. Because this wasn't a kid who lashed out or crumbled. He stayed focused. Stayed calm. And that, more than anything, proves he didn't belong at pick 144. The system tried to sideline him. But the spotlight keeps coming back. Because fans aren't stupid. Social media doesn't forget. And the moment Brady flinched on that podcast, the illusion cracked. You can't call it coincidence anymore. Not when the puzzle fits together this cleanly. It's clear now that the NFL isn't just about what happens on the field. The real plays, the ones that matter, are made behind closed doors, and they don't always follow the rulebook. So what happens next? That's up to Shedeur. If he thrives, and all signs say he will, he'll be the biggest argument yet against league manipulation. Proof that talent will break through, no matter how many hands try to hold it down. And if Brady did orchestrate this with long-term intentions, he better hope Shedeur delivers. Because if this turns out to be a failed power move, it's not just a stain on Brady's legacy. It's confirmation that even legends can play dirty. Let us know what you think. Was Shedeur's fall accidental or calculated? Was Brady caught off guard or caught red-handed? Drop a comment, share your take, and hit that subscribe button if you want more breakdowns like this. Because in a league full of secrets, somebody has to keep asking the hard questions. The NFL wants you to believe it's all clean, all fair, all earned. That a player's draft position reflects their ability. That the system works. But Shedeur Sanders' fall to pick 144? That broke the illusion. This wasn't a simple draft slide. It wasn't one of those he's got potential but needs time situations. It was orchestrated. And the more you pull at the threads, the clearer the pattern becomes. Tom Brady's name keeps coming up, not because he made some explosive admission, but because he didn't. What he didn't say. What he couldn't say. That's what blew the door open. You watch that interview with Logan Paul, and it's like seeing a pro golfer suddenly miss a putt from 2 feet out. It doesn't happen. Not unless something's going on. Brady, of all people, doesn't get rattled in interviews. He spent decades answering questions, handling scandals, deflecting heat. And yet this one moment, this specific moment, got to him. Because he's involved. Not necessarily in the obvious way. Not in the I picked up the phone and told Stefanski to tank Shedeur's value way. That's not how power works in the NFL. That's not how Brady works. His moves are subtle, quiet. He's always been a long-game player. And now, he's bringing that same strategy to the front office. Let's talk about influence. Brady doesn't have to say much. He just has to be in the room. He has to raise an eyebrow, make a comment, float an idea. And the executives and coaches around him know exactly what to do. So if Brady suggested that Shedeur might be better off as a developmental guy, or that maybe there are concerns about media pressure with his background, that's enough. Suddenly, scouts reframe their reports. GMs rethink their boards. Coaches pull back. Nobody wants to be the one who goes against the unofficial current. That's how you end up with a top prospect slipping into the 5th round. Kevin Stefanski's alleged involvement just adds another layer. It's not that he's the mastermind. It's that he's part of the machinery. An experienced coach with ties to multiple teams, rumored to have engaged in backroom discussions that aren't on record but still impact decisions. In a league where everyone's connected, where conversations happen at dinners on golf courses, in texts that never make it to email, this kind of coordination isn't outlandish. It's standard. And the NFL lets it happen. Because this is the part of the league fans never see. The version where team need is code for we were told to wait. Where character concerns become a dog whistle for he doesn't fit our PR plan. Where a player's story is less about performance and more about who gets to control it. Shedeur, by all metrics, should have gone early. His stats were strong. His poise was stronger. And let's be honest, being the son of Deion Sanders should have been an asset, not a liability. But instead, it became part of the excuse. The league doesn't know how to handle players who come in with their own spotlight. And with Deion being as loud and unapologetic as ever, Shedeur was already being viewed through a lens of controversy, even when he hadn't done anything controversial. That's the playbook. Redefine the narrative so you can justify the outcome. And the worst part? The NFL thinks it worked. They assume fans will move on. That Shedeur will quietly fade into a developmental role. That by the time he shines, the scandal will be forgotten. But they're wrong. Because this time, people noticed. This time, the pieces fit together a little too well. Brady's awkward responses. Stefanski's rumored connections. The media's quiet complicity. And Shedeur's undeniable talent still sitting at the heart of it all. None of it adds up unless you accept the reality that the draft was manipulated. And that's exactly what this video is arguing. That the NFL didn't want Shedeur rising too quickly. That influential figures, including Brady, played a role in suppressing his trajectory. That it was never about readiness or potential. It was about control. But here's where it gets interesting. Shedeur didn't fold. He didn't lash out. He didn't play the victim. He kept working. He stayed composed. And that terrified the system even more. Because players who respond to manipulation with grace and quiet determination, they're the ones who can't be stopped. If Shedeur had spiraled, the NFL could have said, "See? We told you." But he didn't. He showed maturity, poise, and restraint. He let the silence speak for itself. And that silence is now louder than any post-draft drama. Every day he steps onto the field, he proves he didn't belong at pick 144. And every day he doesn't complain. He shines a light on the system that tried to bury him. Now the narrative he's no longer the mid-round prospect. He's the symbol of a deeper issue. The quiet resistance. The underdog not. Because of talent, but because of politics. And fans are rooting for him not just because he's good, but because he's right. Because this isn't just about one player's path. It's about the system behind that path. The invisible hands pulling strings. The image makers who decide whose story gets told and whose doesn't. And this time, they got caught. So what now? Brady, for his part, won't face any real consequences. He's too entrenched, too beloved. But his legacy just got more complicated. It's no longer just about Super Bowls and comebacks. It's about how he used his influence once the cameras were off. And if he really did help engineer Shedeur's fall, whether for strategic team building or ego-driven legacy, it's going to follow him. As for the league, they'll pretend this isn't a pattern. But we've seen it before. Prospects falling without reason. Media narratives shifting suddenly. Backroom whispers shaping public perception. This is just the latest and most obvious example. And Shedeur? He's the wild card they couldn't predict. The player who didn't fit the narrative but kept rising anyway. The one who reminds us that talent can be slowed, but not silenced. So keep watching. Because if this all really was a long game, if Brady and Stefanski are positioning Shedeur for a future Raiders dynasty, then every game, every throw, every quiet moment of progress, it's all part of that story. But it's not their story anymore. It's his. And if the NFL keeps trying to write endings before the first chapter's done, they're going to keep getting burned. There's something about silence that speaks louder than noise. And in this case, the silence from the NFL, from Tom Brady, from Kevin Stefanski, it's deafening. Not one of them has offered a clear, specific explanation for Shedeur Sanders' draft day freefall. Just vague statements, PR-flavored answers, and in Brady's case, a shaky appearance on Logan Paul's podcast that said more in what he didn't say than what he did. That moment wasn't just awkward, it was revealing. Brady, the king of media control, stumbled. And not over some complex question. Just a simple prompt about the draft and Shedeur's name. You could feel the discomfort, the pivot, the forced smile, the verbal sidestep. The league's most polished face suddenly didn't have a polished answer. That's not just strange, it's because Tom Brady doesn't stumble. He's not new to media pressure. He's not new to controversy. He's had microphones in his face during cheating scandals, Super Bowl losses, locker room drama, and he's never once cracked. But ask him about a rookie quarterback falling in the draft, and suddenly he's rattled? It wasn't just nerves. It was guilt, or fear of exposure, or both. And when you layer that over the rest of the narrative, the picture starts to become very clear. This wasn't a draft slide, it was a maneuver. A play designed to shift power and control the trajectory of a player the league wasn't ready to embrace on his terms. Shedeur Sanders entered the draft with more than just stats. He had leverage, name recognition, media presence, the Dion effect. He didn't just want to play in the league. He came with his own narrative, one the league couldn't own. And that's a problem for the NFL. Because when a player walks in with his own story, they can't rewrite it. They can't spin it. They can't mold into a league-friendly redemption arc or underdog fairy tale. Shedeur didn't need saving. He didn't need a PR makeover. He didn't need to play by the league's traditional rules. He was ready. And that's why they pulled the rug. The idea that his drop to 144 was just coincidence doesn't hold up. He was too talented, too prepared, too composed. And when executives started passing on him for reasons no one could articulate, the conspiracy started writing itself. That's where Brady's shadow looms large. As a Raiders part owner, he's no bystander. He's got a vested interest in shaping the team's future and the league's narrative. If he saw Shedeur as a long-term asset, then letting him drop wasn't sabotage. It was strategy. Brady's whole career was built on playing the long game. And now, off the field, he's doing the same. Let Shedeur slide. Let other teams pass. Let the media quiet down. Then, scoop him up under the radar. Develop him slowly. Control the story from within. It's legacy management. Only now, it's not Brady's performance that's on the line, it's his influence. And let's not forget Kevin Stefanski, whose rumored involvement adds another layer to the power web. This wasn't a one-man move. This felt coordinated. Executives, owners, coaches. Everyone knew something that no one was saying out loud. And Shedeur's draft card kept sliding further and further down the board. Because if everyone's looking the other way, no one has to take the blame. But now that the smoke's cleared, the questions are louder than ever. And the league can't plug the leaks fast enough. What they underestimated was the scrutiny. The fans. The analysts. The internet. People watched that interview. People tracked Shedeur's slide in real time. And they noticed the silence, the lack of transparency, the complete absence of a legitimate explanation. That's what makes this story stick. Because, for once, the manipulation wasn't subtle enough. It wasn't clean. And when Brady's voice cracked, it triggered a chain reaction that they couldn't walk back. What's wild is how well Shedeur has handled it. No complaints. No controversy. Just quiet work. a quiet refusal to play into the drama. And that silence? That's louder than anything the NFL has tried to say. It shows strength, focus, and more than anything, it shows he knows what's happening. He knows he was moved like a piece on a chessboard. He knows the game was rigged. But instead of making noise, he's preparing to break the board. And if Brady did help orchestrate this in the hopes of molding Shedeur into a Raiders centerpiece down the line, then he better hope that payoff is worth it. Because right now, all eyes are on him. His legacy isn't just about rings anymore. It's about what kind of influence he's using and who it's hurting. Because this wasn't just business. This wasn't just a draft pick. This was an attack on fairness, a manipulation of opportunity. And whether Brady meant for it to look like that or not, that's what it is. The NFL can try to move on, but fans haven't. They're talking. They're investigating. They're remembering. And the next time someone drops in the draft without a clear reason, you better believe this will come back up. Because this story has exposed something deeper. That the NFL doesn't just reward talent, it rewards compliance. And if you challenge the system, if you walk in with your own voice, your own brand, your own power, you get sidelined, buried, benched, not because you can't play, but because you won't play their game. Shedeur Sanders refused to play it. And now, he's got every reason to make them regret it. He's the symbol of a shift. A player who represents what's next, not what's safe. And that terrifies the league. It terrifies the old guard. It terrifies the executives who've spent years controlling the pace of every player's rise. Because here's what they can't stop: progress. You can slide a draft card, but you can't dim real talent. And no matter how far Shedeur fell on paper, his actual trajectory hasn't changed. He's still coming. And now, he's coming with receipts. The NFL wants order, predictability, control. But Shedeur's story just cracked that facade wide open. And behind it, a lot of uncomfortable truths about how the league really operates. So if Brady, Stefanski, or anyone else had a plan to control this narrative, too late. The narrative's already out. And this time, they don't get to write the ending. Drop a comment below. Do you think Brady's long game is real? Is Shedeur the victim of politics, or the spark that's going to force change in how the league treats players with power? Hit the like button if you caught the red flags. Share this with someone still calling it a coincidence. And subscribe for more stories that peel back the layers they don't want you to see. Because as long as they keep playing games behind closed doors, we'll be here calling it out. Every single time.